As we move to talking about conditioning, the one study that as a field really made us all go, no way, was about 10 years ago. Shepard Siegel and Barbara Ramos in 2002 did a study really looking at reapplying Pavlov's principles to things like tolerance. I'm imagining people in this room are familiar with classical conditioning. Pavlov put food in front of a dog salivates. Put food in front of a dog, ring a bell, dog looks at you funny. But do that a bunch of times, in time, ring the bell, the dog salivates. Ringing a bell has nothing to do with salivation, but it can become a conditioned stimulus that will elicit salivation as a conditioned response. I always like showing this cartoon. It's Pavlov from the view of the dog. The dog says, watch what I can make Pavlov do. As soon as I drool, he'll smile and write in his little book. So I like thinking it went down that way. Now, what Siegel and Ramos said was, let's jump forward to human beings and alcohol use, or other drug use. Imagine for alcohol, imagine this is the only room we all ever drink in. And the only people we drink with, the very people in this room. Functionally, how is this room and how is seeing each other any different than that bell to Pavlov's dog? It's not. These are cues associated with the presentation of alcohol to the body. Why does that matter? In physiology, we know there's something called the opponent process theory that says, shove the body one way, the body shoves back the other. This is why we sweat when we're hot, we shiver when we're cold. If you have a drug like alcohol, this slows the body down as a depressant. Walk in this room and drink, slows the body down. Walk in this room and drink, slows the body down. In time, walk in this room, body starts speeding up. The body anticipates that a drug is on the way that's going to slow it down and makes a conditioned compensatory response to try and account for the fact that this is coming. Graphically, to show you my artistic interpretation of this, imagine this is the subjective level of alcohol someone's looking to get to. They come in here and drink on day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day whatever. At some point, they just walk in the room. All the central nervous system functions slowed by alcohol now speed up. What's the catch? On the left is how much the amount they've been used to drinking. They drink that same amount. Subjectively, do they feel it? No. So what do? Keep drinking. Do they show or feel it now? Yeah. They look the same. They're holding their liquor. But if we have them blow a breathalyzer, they're at a higher blood alcohol level because it took more alcohol to get them to that feeling. Over time, we can see a great deal, maybe even a scary deal of tolerance develop. Researchers said, wow, theoretically, completely makes sense. We should prove this. So one scientist did. I was at a conference in Seattle where I heard this research presented for the first time, where in bodies with a long-standing history of heroin use, and therefore tolerance, you have the injection of heroin take place under medically supervised conditions. As an opiate, slows the body down big time. Do it again, not a fluke. Do it again, clearly not a fluke. Fourth and final time, give a placebo, saline solution. Don't do this, but if you inject saline, nothing happens. It's a neutral substance to the human body. But think about if this theory holds. If, as the needle comes toward the body, that's a cue that tells the body we're about to receive an opiate that's going to really slow it down, what should the body do? Speed up. Good. Injection occurs, body goes off the wall the opposite direction. It prepared to receive the opiate never came. We could flat out see this happened. Researchers said, wow, you know what, we just learned what a withdrawal symptom is. Imagine someone says, I want to quit, but I really like you guys, so I want to say hi. What happens as soon as they walk in the room? Feel shaky, jittery, on edge, going through withdrawals. This is so clear that Siegel was reminded of a quote from the 50s about drug addiction, where Cocteau said, the dead drug leaves a ghost behind, and at certain hours it haunts the house. Siegel said the ghost is the conditioned compensatory response. Walk in the room, body prepares to receive it. It, in quote, haunts the house when confronted with conditioned stimuli. So what is the goal of treatment providers? Effective treatment requires an appreciation of how conditioning may be used to exercise the ghost. We can look at ways to actually, Pavlov taught us extinction happens, we can work on extinguishing these kind of cues. Smoking cessation programs, all over this. Rearrange the furniture in your house, you will have less craving, less withdrawal, greater success with smoking cessation. The relevance to the students of safety of students is, some researchers said, oh my goodness, maybe this is what an alcohol overdose is. Maybe this is what a drug overdose is. What if someone goes to a completely new environment? All the familiar cues are gone. Isn't it conceivable that this could happen? That is what an overdose is. Steve Woods, first person I heard talk about this research. A study in Michigan looked at 61 consecutive drug overdose admissions into a hospital setting. What did 60 of the 61 have in common? Brand new environment. That is ridiculous. The cues normally associated with their use were not there. They used as much as they'd previously handled with no problem, and it hit them, and hit them very scarily hard. One researcher has said, there are a lot of cues. People shouldn't hear that it's, exclusively due to environment. But we know environment absolutely matters. Gutierrez Cebollada, a researcher in Spain, looked at 76 consecutive admissions into an ER, where the only criteria for admission was, did they have heroin in their body? He wanted to know, did they meet the medical threshold of what an overdose is, or were the drugs in their body, but they were below the threshold for what an overdose would be considered? He was right. Being in the same environment didn't make people immune from an overdose. Of the 54 people that met criteria for an overdose, 52% were in a new setting, 48% were in the same environment. But I've never statistically seen this next part. Of those with drugs in their body, but were below the threshold of an overdose, every one of them had been in the same environment, not a single person had come from a novel setting. In other words, if you turn this table on its side, if you're in a new environment and you wound up in a hospital later that night, 100% of the time it was for an overdose. Not to get too far ahead of myself, but think about the implications for our students who study abroad. Think about spring break trips. Think even about Halloween, where now everyone looks like a pirate, which is kind of cool, and like people are decorating things, the environments are changing, the cues are changing. Siegel made very clear taste is a cue. If someone has a favorite drink, that's a cue. A study with college students in Canada showed that those that drank 2 drinks of identical potency, but one looked, tasted, and smelled like beer, one was bright blue and really minty, exhibited greater tolerance to a familiar tasting beverage than to one they'd never had before. The novel tasting drink hit them harder. Self-administration cues can be a part of cue. Animals that self-administer a drug by pressing a lever have greater tolerance than animals that get the exact same dose of the drug at the same time, but they're not doing anything to require the delivery of the drug. The other animal pushing it is dosing them. When there's no clear cue for them, they get less tolerance than when there's a clear self-administration cue. So Siegel talks about the situational specificity of tolerance. And to quote him, if alcohol is presented in a manner divorced from the usual alcohol-associated stimuli, the effects of alcohol are enhanced. So when we look at implications, again, stimulus control strategies as part of relapse prevention, things like smoking cessation, there's a lot that can be done for those in recovery, for those making changes. I think we have to, as a field, look at high-risk events that could be associated with changes in cues. Again, big implications for student studies abroad. But as a field, we also don't know what to do with this research yet. It's like short of making everyone take Psych 101, how do we get this very clear implications of this into the hands of the students in all of our communities, and what are the behavioral strategies that we could do for folks? But we do think, you know, I have so much respect for what Laura's done with the Red Watch Band, so much the importance of bystander work. I mean, even making sure whether people drink or don't drink that they know about this, so that the implications for those who make the choice to drink or their bystander friends become clear.